Judah, good to see you. I was checking my contacts to see where we first connected, and I'm not sure if you know specifics. My contacts mentioned an IAC event in 2007, but that we'd already had some exchanges well before then. So we're getting close to the 20-year mark here.
That's for sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, David. We have known each other for decades, since we were boys, I think. And I'm excited to be on the show and meet with all USD marketers too. So thanks for having me.
Yeah,
and
well,
I do remember. I do remember 100%. I'll tell you the story. So 2006, I want to say, there, I believe, still is a company named Frost and Sullivan.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Right. Yeah, and they had something called the Mind Exchange with the X, the Mind Exchange. And at the time, I was working at a large entity, and I was invited by iProspect. If you remember the Frederick Markini and the early, sort of Frankenstein SEO stuff they were doing, really impressive iProspect SEO firm, in Boston. And so I went, I think it was in Quincy, and I met David there. And, David was a marketing expert in digital. And I was very early in my career and very impressed with David's knowledge. And it was, who else was there? I remember Jeremiah Oyang.
Because it was Jeremiah Oyang, it was Ted Murphy, who just launched this latest,
that Mind Comment. That's right, before I could see it.
And someone who I'm sure you've encountered a lot is Avinash Kaushik, the Google Analytics SEO guru.
Yep. He's amazing. I visited him in Building 41 when he worked there back in the day.
Well, Frost and Sullivan, it was actually my first speaking event in person, and yep. So I still have Karen over at Frost and Sullivan to thank for that opportunity. And yes, being on the session with Jeremiah, who I speak to all the time, and Ted, who's quite a character, and Avinash, who I've long respected. But also the last panel, they brought us all together because we all had our separate sessions. And the four of us, Judah, I don't know if you were actually in there for it, but there were literally more people on stage than there were at the last session. So it was just like hanging out. Still a lot of fun, very memorable and impactful event. I
really was.
And I will also add, in my contacts file, I'm curious if I've said this about anyone else, but there was actually a note that said "damn smart" when I
that's really kind of you. Thank you.
So
and I remember Ethan Griffin was there too from Group Commerce. Remember, he was early FBM guru. And Jeremiah was at Hitachi. He was the emperor of social media and was live blogging. And team, this was like so long ago that it was Warner Brothers do with RSS and FeedBurner. And people were still saying for social, you should have sock puppets on your social account. It was in the early days when we were just all starting to figure this out. So it's an honor to be back and to see the progression of your career.
Well, it's always great to see you staying on top of things and advancing the field of AI, and would love to hear more. You've obviously had some big changes happen recently. So I don't even want to try to do a too formal an introduction on that front. I'll let you share what you're up to now, and then some thoughts you want to share, and for as far as the community goes, for those who haven't joined us yet, it's just it is meant to be a very conversational environment. So as you have things that you want to share, things you want to ask Judah, then raise hands, put something in the chat if you need to shout something out. Judah, you probably won't be too offended. So, all right.
No, happy to answer anything.
All right.
Absolutely. I read it to David again, just so you know, at Darren Herman's Silicon Alley Sports at the Invitational at the Artsy Country Club up there in Dobbs Ferry. And I walked into the reception and there was David, and it was awesome.
Especially
say you're the serial marketer.
Well, but not a serial sports player, so I don't want to give anyone that illusion, because I've always joined under the schmoozer pass. So
Same
Yeah.
here. I explained if it was racquetball, I might join, or mini golf.
Ooh, oh, I'd love to do a mini golf.
All
More
right,
places
well,
in
let's get
between.
started. There anything in between, but yeah. So yeah, I'm happy to give a
Yeah,
sort
who
of
are
quick
you, Judah?
overview.
Who are you?
Who am I? It's a good question. I still ask myself that at my age. But I'm an entrepreneur, and I've been working with internet and software since like the mid 90s. I started in a startup like 1997 that did information retrieval. So it was like auction web existed, you know, before eBay, and we were using Northern Light Search, and that was a company called Sovereign Hill Software that was created to productize an ANSI C++ toolkit that was used to search the congressional record and Library of Congress in the Clinton administration. So we built like a web top interface to basically index Lotus Notes databases, info file systems, the World Wide Web, PDFs, things like that. So you could search them with queries and get best passages and click through to the source. And so I remember when like Google came out, you know, and all the engineers on the team were, you know, the Stanford guys that did. And this is out of UMass's Center for Intelligent Information Retrieval and Carnegie Mellon's Language Processing Institute. So I got schooled in, you know, search in the early days before, you know, GeoCities, right? There wasn't really SEM or SEO. SEO was search engine ranking, and it was all black hat techniques, keyword stuffing, right? I mean, stuff that you just can't do anymore. So I was at that startup till it got acquired, ended up working for a publicly traded company named Dataware. You can read about this all on LinkedIn if you really want to know, so I'll be quick. And got moved up to Boston, where I've lived forever now, and enjoy the community out here. It's pretty cerebral, a lot of intelligent folks, a lot of companies, and a lot of people doing cool stuff. And worked there through like the dot-com implosion when that company went, you know, belly up. And I went to the auction in my office where all the phones were, and things like that. I realized like I had some good knowledge, but I was always very impressed with the executives who were talking about liquidity and solvency and all these financial concepts. And I thought to myself, well, I'll go back to school and learn that stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. I went back on an MBA, their Master of Science in Quantitative Finance, local school, and just continued to work in the industry with my own consultancy. I worked for Sun Microsystems, like Monster Worldwide, Reed Elsevier before that, Nokia. I worked with Greg Selko, if you know Greg, Karma Loop, and now XSET. And then eventually, like, I ran in at these trade shows to all these amazing entrepreneurs who had books and, you know, $5,000 a day or more rates. And I was like, man, how do they do that? So wrote a book, started selling guru consulting services under the brand Smart Current to big companies. You know, I did like strategy for like what should Best Buy's top 10 machine learning use cases be in 2016, or like I worked for the Ford, right, as their strategic analytics consultant for years on retainer, and had a great time going out to Detroit as it was redeveloping and Dan Gilbert was buying up downtown. And then I realized that like services businesses are hard to scale and the margins start to erode when you start to, you know, get busy. And I was sort of selling guru services, and that can be very lucrative and fun, but it also like always requires, you know, continuing to like iterate and sell deals. And I looked at it and I was doing a lot of like machine learning stuff. And at Monster and other companies like Karma Loop and stuff, we were doing, you know, some, you know, SAS and regressions and classifications. So I said, you know what, the margins are better in software and I want to build software, you know, and working in the internet and with the data and software forever, like I had been involved in all of these things. So I said, you know what, well, I've got enough saved up, you know, I'm going to go and start this software company. So I started this company called Visidata with my current partner, Dan. And Visidata basically did highly visual data science apps, unsupervised and supervised machine learning for like BI companies like Domo and stuff like that. We built a bunch of cool stuff to do like clustering and market basket analysis, super visual, way out there, really powerful, but it was too early. Like, didn't really care about AI. We have like KPI dashboards and stuff like that. So it wasn't the easiest stuff to sell in 2016. We sold a few things. We developed a binary classifier. It's like a multi-layer perceptron neural network. A little overkill, I get it, guys, for binary classifier. What a classifier does is it predicts which two things will occur. You know, will the customer churn? Will the customer buy? Will the customer buy again, right? Any two outcomes. So we had built this classifier and it sold to IBM. Watson team, creative media team, Brian Hull, you guys know him, he bought it. Brian's in New York, he's amazing. And Robert Redmond and IAB, they were one of our early customers. Sold it to Brett House at Nielsen, sold it to a company named Innovair, sold it to a bunch of enterprises in the early days, and then started to build it out. So we built a multinomial classifier, which predicts 3 or more outcomes up to 33 different classes. So think of like doing next best action or, you know, set a predictive segmentation, right? I want to segment based on our segment scheme or based on high, medium, low lifetime value, whatever. So we built it a way to do that. We built it a very powerful like advanced regression capability to predict not just like categorical outcomes, but numeric outcomes. And then we built out some time series to predict not just how much, but how much over how long, decomposing like seasonality and trend and cycle time. Under the name Squark. And so we picked Squark because when we started it, Slack and Spark were pretty popular, and you know, Google and Uber were verbs. And so we're like, oh, you can Squark that, Squark it up, right? So we had this marketing idea. Squark is also the supersymmetrical opposite particle of a quark with no spin. So I like that idea of no spin. So we did that, made every single SaaS rookie mistake probably you could make, maybe not all of them. But in retrospect, you know, it's like, I remember my old boss saying, well, how would you do it different? And like, when I look back on it, while we succeeded in porting the ship, as David was referring to, we could talk about that. Building a startup is a pretty hard thing. We decided to bootstrap it. That's kind of insane. And then we decided to customer fund it, and we didn't raise a ton of capital. So we raised like $1.6 million or something like that. Less than that, actually. I know the exact number. And then we started to build out a team. Sold deals, did it very entrepreneurially. We partnered with the research institution in Boston, started like granting money to universities and working with professors and postdocs and grad students that, you know, we couldn't afford to hire because we didn't raise enough money. But now work at Tesla and Google and MathWorks and Intel. Some amazing folks we helped in their early careers, and sold deals. Like our clients, like if you go to type in UPMC Forbes Squark, you'll see where we're predicting for national healthcare campaigns who would participate in living liver donations. 6 months of work to 1 day, 1,300% free budget, 99% more accurate models. Like we figured out how to do machine learning and quote AI, right? For that, sold like MGB, Epic Games, predicting churn on Fortnite. So like enterprise, scalable, we would compete with the biggest players like the data robots. They don't want to talk about us. The Microsoft, and they have research lab stuff that does what we do. Love Microsoft a lot, they're a partner. Run it the H2Os, you know, Domino Day, all those guys. When you're bootstrapped and you're an entrepreneur and you got to pay your bills, you're very economical with how you do things. And when you partner with academia, you sort of rid yourself of all the noise. And so we created something that works really well. And then I can't share the name of the acquiring company. I was able to have it acquired, sell it to a 4,000 person, 90-year-old company in 5 continents on May 3rd, where I now am actually at a off-site in Baltimore, of all places, actually in Columbia, near the Merriweather Post Pavilion for you Wilco and music fans. And I work as like the chief AI officer now. So I have that title, right? Should it exist at all, right? Well, I do. How long will it exist? And the goal is essentially to empower this company with responsible AI. And there's sort of 4 pillars of that. There's like, you know, AI people. So building a high-performing, collaborative, cross-functional global team. There's the AI software, so that would include Squark, and obviously there's a whole bunch of other AI coolness and software that we never automated and is relevant, whether this LLMs or SLMs or causal stuff is a bunch. That's all my purview, and then we focus on the data, owning, making it accessible, governing it, making sure it's ready for the AI and the machine learning, and then obviously the infrastructure. That's an important portion of making sure it's scalable and secure and performant. And that's what I've been doing. Growing the team, figuring out how to, help them make more money. And it's a pretty profitable business, founded out of a nice Jewish family who left Germany in 1939 and partnered in the Vatican. So it's a great story, and I loved the people I met, the family, and I loved the fact that it was an AI for good story, right? Like essentially the company raises money for nonprofits. That's fundamentally, you probably figure it out if you dig deep. But they raise billions and billions of dollars for the largest charities in the world, ranging from the Red Cross, to UNICEF, to the American Cancer Society, to DFW, right? And there's an agency component to it. And I thought, wow, they have vertically integrated manufacturing in 5 continents, pretty large team. And I thought, wow, I report to the CEO. This is a great opportunity to, transform this legacy cash cow business with machine learning and AI. And here I get to in a couple of years, and I'll learn some stuff. And so that's me in a nutshell. I hope that was maybe a little loquacious or long in the tooth overview, but that's me. Meanwhile, I live in Boston. I'm a dad, husband, like to go to concerts. If anyone knows StubHub, I bought some A7 row 10 tickets for Green Day to take my daughter, and I got C7 tickets. So I'm trying to seek the guarantee so I get my A section ticket. But that's me in a nutshell. I like to ride my bike.
Well, I don't have as many great questions about the bike riding or the music scene, but with this chief AI officer role, like when you say you're building a team, who is on a chief AI officer's team?
That's a great question. So we're building it out. So keep in mind, like part of the capability that we bring to the table is like SaaS software. So, continuing to invest in full stack and front end and back end engineers is important, right? It's also important to have, I think like DevOps and like infrastructure stuff should be baked into engineering, but you may want to have someone handling network operations and DevOps and things like that. That can be helpful, though, again, like baked into what engineers should do so it doesn't drift too much and people throw things over the wall. But also like data engineers, like there's a ton of data here, largely in, Snowflake and other systems like that. So it needs to be extracted and transformed, and even before that governed. And so, data engineers, DBAs, and then because we have to sell deals, there's like a sales component to what I do. Like I don't just sit in the office and talk about algorithms and stuff. Like I go out and talk to customers and do the dog and pony show and sell deals, right? I love selling deals. So there's a sales component to it. So hiring a sales team, and then there's analysts. And so currently the team has a lot of analysts, and they do different things. Some people use our technology, others hand code it. There are similarities across use cases and clients and models and model classes. And the idea is that one can automate a lot of this stuff and make it such that you guys think it's crazy, but it's true. Like you can click on a button and, for a domain and a set of use cases and predictions you want to make, whether it's who's going to buy, who's going to churn, who's going to upsell. If the data is standard and common enough across clients with what we created at Squark, push a button and out comes the results. It can be a little blasphemous to hear that for data scientists. Like we never sold the data science. Well, I can't say we didn't. There were like some big data science teams that used it, but there's also a data science component to it. So in order to write the actual Python, right? We have data scientists as well. So we're always meant to augment data scientists, not replace them. But from a commercial perspective, data scientists can only say no to software like this. I've been told a long time that they're like the bee's knees, and when you present an automation of AI, like only they can do it better. So like our vector to sell deals was going to the business leaders, the marketers, and basically saying, hey, what are use cases? What gets you bonus? What are you trying to do? And it would fall into different camps. Some marketers didn't have time or believe in it. I think with Chat GPT and that the immediacy of that has changed the whole game. Or they would believe it and they'd want to learn more about it. So there were early adopters who bought, and they often hadn't been serviced by their data science teams. They hadn't been serviced well, or there weren't data science teams. And we provided a capability where they could do, not generative hallucinatory predictions, even with the nice RAG architecture preventing hallucinations. It's literally predictive AI, right? It's predictive analytics with machine learning, with a lot of stuff that goes into preparing and engineering the data before it goes to the algorithms, and a lot of stuff that goes into explain why and produce results. So that's what the team looks like, and how kind of we go to market, to add a little bit more to that. Will look.
Yeah, because I'm curious. Well, like a few things I'm also wondering about from that go-to-market perspective, but also like how do you and how do you interface with the marketing team, and how much does the marketing team want to interface with you, and is it like very geared toward like marketing the stuff you're building, or are you or is one of the things you're looking at as you're talking about being more profitable, efficient, all of that, like are you even looking at how to best infuse the marketing department and discipline with the best of AI?
It's a good question. So marketers are all different, and I think to sell to marketers, you have to be pretty sophisticated, just in terms of branding and the way you position your product and what you tell them. And it's so noisy. There's so many SaaS tools. So it's challenging, like sometimes folks don't give you the day or the time. So we would seek people who were open to learning about this stuff. And it was pretty clear on the first call. And, over the years, like I just stopped taking calls where I knew there weren't buyers. I wasn't rude about it, but I would, either not take it because that person doesn't have any budget, or they're not going to be able to buy the software. No reason to talk to them. Not offensive or anything. It's just, hey, I got other things to do. You unlimited time. And then if I did think they'd buy, we'd have a conversation where I'd ask questions like, how do you buy software? Like if you buy software at your company, you know how you buy it, right? You guys know that. Who do you go to, right? LCA, we're going to do 3 comparisons. Should I go to John in procurement? Whatever it is, you know how to buy it if you're a buyer. Do you have budget? Do you sign? So, pretty quickly you find out whether you should, as a SaaS entrepreneur, spend your time training people for free. They did a lot of, or selling deals. And so oftentimes marketers want free POCs, free. I want to see it on my data. And I used to do that, and I just stopped doing it because it puts too much control in the hands of the buyer. Right? It's like, well, we got to pay the bills. We got to pay for the GPUs. Though NVIDIA Inception is a partner, even the accelerators, they've been really kind over the years. You would essentially find willing participants, who'd want to, go with you down that path. And I would go and say, hey, we don't do free POCs, but we'll do like 3-month trial for $9K, right? And what are your objections? The objections are either going to be, I don't understand what Squark is. I don't have a use case. I don't know how to think of this stuff in terms of use case. I don't have the data. I don't have the people. I don't have the time. And so I would just implement like what I call Squark Symmetry, which is our proprietary onboarding and professional services customer success program. And I'd say, listen, if you want to learn it all, I've got 466 slides that start with, Turing and go all the way up to, Yam LeCun. And if you want to do business case ideation, because Squark was never really focused on a vertical, it was like a calculator. I've spent a lot of time hearing out what people want to do, and there's commonalities, right? Want to predict what their customer is going to do next. And so we would have the use case discussion. If it was data, it was often like an aspirational, thing if they didn't have the data. And so yes, current state, future state gap, let's solve for that gap. Maybe there's some data engineering. And in some cases where, you've got these great brands who want to do business with you and you've sort of gotten the approval or you're trying to get the approval, you just do it for them. You're like, listen, we'll teach you to fish, right? And so by the end of that 30 days or that 90 days, you're going to be fully enabled. And so we look for marketers, to answer your question, who would want to really buy software and really wanted to do this. And I mean, one of the challenges being like a startup is we run up against companies like DataRobot. Well, I did their lending tree data set head to head, and we beat their models by 1/1000th of a log loss. And it's like, we're in DHL with them, right? But I don't have a team to support 455,000 people, right? But I do support the US business with what we do. So we would run into big competitors, and that was really a challenge too, when you look at 800-pound gorilla DataRobot, how do you compete against them, right? But you build great software that works. So yeah, it's been interesting. I learned a lot doing this, and then selling a company is also like a unique challenge because I had never sold a company with a lot of deals, right, as an entrepreneur. And so there's a marketing aspect to that. Now, I think your question was more like, how did interfacing with marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what the acquirer does is produce, they score lists, select audiences, and then do stuff to monetize those audiences on behalf of their clients in a profitable way for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the use cases that this company does, operationally, are focused on marketing. Who's going to donate? When are they going to donate? How much are they going to donate? What do you offer them? What packages? When do you send it? These are all machine learning problems, right? And they're easy for Squark to do. They're just specific to sort of the nonprofit industry. But yeah, marketers, you guys are a fickle bunch. I'm like one too, and it's, they're early adopters. And I found when you find those, they're willing to listen. And then there's other folks who, it's like having a pedigree, right? We're not going to, never get fired for buying IBM, right? So sometimes marketers will look and be like, oh, it's not.
So, okay, so
data IQ, but it's like, well, models are better. I'll do the Pepsi challenge against any of those companies.
So
if the marketer will buy the software, what I beat them, and agree to that in advance.
Well, if they're more of the tried and true play there, and you're looking at things that sounds like you're vetting for what could help bring into the fold there, and and looking at other kinds of AI technologies out there that you might be able to incorporate and work with. Do you have a really high bar for things that are I mean, obviously, everything's early, and even things that we think are really strong, like 1 week, Perplexity was the gold, best in class, research assistant, and then Forbes and Wired took them down. And I think there are a lot of people who might see this and trust them way less this week than they did before, right? So obviously, things change even for what seems to be best of breed. But how high a bar do you have, or can you find some scrappy 2-person startup, and it's this is meeting your needs, they've got it, it's good and you can bring it in? Or is that not how they work?
Well, I mean, we were a small multi-person startup with very light funding and not that big, and we sold to Nielsen, IBM, giant companies. And I think that was a factor of, really wanting to do it. And when you're smaller, you're willing to build stuff for people. You're willing to sort of go the extra mile. You're willing to maybe do things and be more personalized in the way that you service them. And And so like once we had the core foundation of what the product did down, like we just stopped visioning as entrepreneurs and we started just saying, what do our customers want? Right. And then the roadmap became very customer driven. And so part of like, I think both winning and potentially losing customers, and everyone has churn, was how much you listen to them. And I think like when you're smaller, maybe your muscles aren't as big or muscular, but your ears are a bit more attuned and wide open, right? So we tried to listen to people, and we didn't lie. We didn't like BS. It's like we didn't think we could do it. We tell you we couldn't do it. And so I think like building that confidence relationship with the prospects built on trust. And if we really knew, if like it was like you have a budget, right, and you're like really serious about it, and you just won't pay us, and you really want us to do a POC to prove it, if we put the milestones in place and make sure like there's going to be some real T's and C's that get signed at the outcome, we would do it. So you have to create, like, it's so cliche, but you want to like create joy in your customers. You guys know that. And like who you work with is important, and if you can trust them. And like one of the things I realized selling the company is like honor and integrity is the gift a person gives themselves. How that they treat other people and how they handle their investors and how they handle the acquirers and the new team. And I think like, you pick who you want to work with. And I think, we talked to a lot of people and people picked who they wanted to work with, and we got picked a few times, and that was nice.
Nice. So one other thing, like not directly related to your job, but since we discussed where search is going and you've been following this for a long time, like what's your take the next year, next few years on how radically different the whole search market's going to be, or not? Like, is this a cataclysmic event for AdWords as we know it? And
well, I never click on AdWords, and just because I've been using like the internet for so long, like I can't, like I actually avoid AdWords, and I have for ever, because like I know that I can find what I'm looking for without needing to click through those ads. I also had very little capital to spend on Google. And one of my sort of claim to fame, and you can find this out, is I was the web analyst who determined that Search Me had a JavaScript executing bot and was really screwing up web analytics JavaScript tags in like 2006 or about 2006, 2007. And so when I bought a bunch of keywords for Squark, you're supposed to on AdWords, through the junior account manager or whatever, my very small budget was instantly eaten by bots. And they guaranteed that wasn't going to happen. So I had to prove to Google that it was bots. And, I got the response, well, it wasn't bots, but here's your money back. And so I just never really had the greatest experience with paid search. Like, again, like I'm not a CMO, right? I've pretended to be one, right? I could do the job probably better than a lot of people, but many of you have been executive leaders in marketing for a long time, really have the muscle memory and the skills. And I understand paid search is an extremely valuable channel with a lot of data, and I see how it works. But for me, just personally, I don't use it and I don't buy it. So like I use foundational models all the time. And I love ChatGPT 4.0. I don't really have a problem with OpenAI at all. Like, if anything, I think they're awesome. And they should be speaking at my next event in Boston in July. So I use, like, I sometimes I go to Google still, of course, but it's harder to find stuff, right? So I often will go to like an LLM. Maybe not Perplexity though. I like Perplexity a lot. I'll need to figure something out, and I'll just ask the question to the LLM and I'll get what I'm looking for without having to sort of like read the tea leaves and sort of click through things and try to like shore these fragments to like get a perspective. So without a doubt, it's changing, and we all know that. I always think it's like a couple, I guess one person and one company I wouldn't bet against. One is Google. It's just like, you know, Google's dead, you know, red alert. Capital wins, right? Intelligence wins. And like those guys are going to do whatever it takes. It's a much more sophisticated company than it was, as I understand it. They have P&Ls, and 20 or 15 years ago they didn't. So I don't think Google's going to go anywhere. I just think the nature of that experience is going to change. And I think the best stuff that you see come out of the startups will be imitated, bought, repurposed into a googly, you know, interface. There may be like a new incumbent that rises up like Perplexity and, you know, figures out the right model and stuff. But I mean, if you look at like Perplexity's revenue, like a rounding error, like Google probably spends more money on biodynamic food at Building 41, you know, than Perplexity makes. Not to insult Perplexity, but it's really hard to think like, oh, these startups are just going to get a bunch of VC money, you know, and keep getting it, not selling deals sufficiently, and then like beat the largest incumbents. I don't think it's impossible that that happens, but I don't think Google's going anywhere. And when you start to see like, I remember Google's dead, and it's like, just wait. And now you see the token lens, you know, we have at this company, you know, Gemini, and we're playing with it and stuff. Be cool. So I think it's changing, but I think the incumbents are, you know, going to stick around and change with it, and there'll be some other players that'll come in. It's an oligopoly in search, right? It's not a state of perfect competition or monopolist competition. So just because you can go get a bunch of money from other people and spend it building AI doesn't mean you're going to be able to compete against the big G. Other vendors, you know, potentially, you know, but I just think too big, can't win. Like my approach to beating these big companies, when I have a few times in some of these enterprises, was like, go where they don't go, right? Like these big companies are like, they're hard to turn, hard to move that ship. You know, it takes, they can't respond as agilely or as quickly as a startup. So like, for example, like Microsoft has features in their AutoML and their research labs that have been in Squark for a long time. We do some level of natural language processing explainability on Google's BERT transformer when we engineer features, classifications, regressions, and textual data that we worked with our academic partners that go beyond what Google has available for explainability publicly. And I know this to be powerful because I was talking to the gentleman who formerly ran AI and ML and NLP at Bank of America. And he's like, I've been asking my team to do this for 2 years. And like, it's a hard problem to figure out. So not that startups can't win, but like going head to head, you know, David and Goliath is a Bible story. It's a powerful Bible story. But, you know, you got to pick the giants you want to go after. And I think it's better to sort of do like a different type of, I guess, more metaphor here is like assault. You don't just go full frontal.
I mean, my own gut take on this is like, you know, I mean, Gartner famously said like there's going to be a good, Google's going to take a 25% hit in search activity, and like I think by the end of 2026 or by 2026 or it's that like that. And it's like, to your point, Google can survive this, right? Like search is still their cash cow. It would be a huge drop in revenue, but they'll be fine. Like they're, you know, trying to
well, all companies have a superior growth period, right? In finance, like you just look at it, right? Whether it was AOL, Time Warner, right? And when you start to decompose risk, there's financially systematic and unsystematic risk. And so like the risk we're talking about with Google is probably, well, you guys tell me, but it's probably unsystematic risk. It's more googly risk. of their response and their ability to pivot. But like, yeah,
I mean,
I don't think we're going anywhere.
it's like where I'm more concerned is the businesses that do rely on Google for a lot of their customer acquisition and for where it works for them, right? And then the publishers, it's like, I mean, my favorite example, and I apologize for repeating it for in the community, but I still like, I do this more and more, like recipe sites, right? Because because like I now go and look up recipes on ChatGPT and like talk to the LM and customize them, and people are like, where'd you get this recipe? I'm like, AI did it, and it's like better than anything they've had, and it's so there's that. But like, and recipe sites are terrible, right? You scroll through like just dozens and dozens of screens full of crap that's overwritten to game search results and add more ad impressions, and they're terrible, except that there are people on the other side of this that are not terrible people. They're just trying to make a living here, and doing essentially what Google indirectly tells them to do. And so I might not like it very much, but I don't want people to, in this case, go hungry. And if everyone like me is like, the experience sucks so much on Google, like, and it's way better on AI, like what happens to that's just one tiny example of all the publishers out there where 25% drop, which is not even like as cataclysmic as some people think it will be. Then like that's the like people are going to have to adapt in ways that I guess I can't quite predict yet, and it's just like how we avoid those ripple effects. Like if Google's okay, I'm not sure everyone else will be. I do want to hear though, are there other questions or the things that Judah's brought up, things about his role, where he's going with this, or the things that others here want to ask you before we wrap in 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, and while people are thinking of that, there was a machine learning model, like some blog Google came out with, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, and there were some of their AI folks where you could pass a recipe, and they would tell you whether it was a cookie or a cake, or a something. They have some Google-y thing going on with it,
or something.
Pretty fun. Hey, David.
Hey, are you still focusing on nonprofits? Is that going to be still near and dear to your heart?
Yeah, so I have sort of 2 goals. One is to help the nonprofit side of the business, largely agencies across the country and Europe and Asia, integrate and do better with AI. Some of the analysts have been using Squark for like 5 years, and they're significantly more efficient, and the results in terms of like money raised and customer satisfaction is much higher by a significant factor, even greater than I realized when I was negotiating the deal. So there's continuing to empower them, and that's kind of like, I often think of Squark as like a canvas where like if you know what you want to do, kind of like a TI-85, you can go and like do it. But I always wanted to build, just didn't have the capital for it, these Squark 4s. So like Squark for nonprofits, Squark for marketers, Squark for logistics, Squark for finance, right? And these are essentially instances of the core technology applied to a set of use cases, which is so key in AI, and data, and the idiom and nomenclature of that audience, right? So that experience tuned to them. And so for nonprofit, the universe is like donors, lab sustaining, reactivated, right? They're raising money, and they take these big files with all sorts of data, whether it's Verisk or Abacus or Axiom or IRI and PDM. I mean, there's all this data, and they're associating it with a response variable. Like they're going to donate, they're going to donate again, they're going to stop donating. And, there's ways to standardize that around a common core of data and allow for third-party data to be introduced and data model enhancements to really empower and make that more effective and efficient. Not replacing people, but like augmenting them and changing their roles and responsibilities to some degree. So yeah, that's a key piece. So that's one piece. And the other side, David, is selling Squark licenses. So they're still, still going to keep the brand around and going to still invest in the function of the group. And we're still going to sell deals to for-profits. Exactly how we verticalize it, if we just focus or create like a couple Squark 4s for marketers or for gaming, remains to be seen. But right now, obviously, because the bread and butter, right, is focused on helping this company, that's what the money is earned from raising money. That's been a real emphasis. But that being said, the new CEO, been in the data world a long time, sees the larger vision and the opportunity to continue to sell licenses. So it's a bit of both, but focus more right now on understanding their business and ways we can optimize and extend it.
Okay. Thanks, David.
No questions? You gotta make me Randy Moss it for you Patriots fans. He would do, he'd ask his own questions. Yeah, and, the interview would end. No, feel free to ask me anything.
So, well, like with the different,
If I blow you guys away, am I too intimidating? Just joking.
We're just going to blame the heat wave. It's
all right, it is hot.
It's damn hot. Saying Biloxi, Africa hot. Anyway, like with the different areas that you're looking at in terms of like, because you were saying like with the flow of just like all the different ways of reaching donors and everything else, and like trying to optimize that. Is there any part of like the ecosystem, the like supply chain of sorts from like the with that whole value that you provide, that you're now acquired provides, that you think will be most impacted or is most ripe for being impacted by machine learning? Like, is there one like killer app that you think is going to be more transformative, just as far as like where you really want to start, like just having that big win?
So it's interesting. It's an interesting question, David. So I think the reason we got acquired is because we've been there, like, remember, early customers for five years or something like that. And so they had already proven it out, and like they were very cagey, like telling us what they were doing with it, SaaS, right? And we couldn't like publish their case studies. Many of our clients we just can't talk about, including some that I did. But the use cases there are pretty known. And so it's really about extending what's worked across, hundreds and thousands of clients. So that's going to be like a main emphasis. Where I always thought this stuff was super helpful from a marketer's perspective was maybe in multiple areas. And I'll just sort of stream of consciousness, Kerouac style. The one is in like the customer journey, whether you want to do path to purchase, engagement mapping, whatever you want to call it, right? Where like you're going through a series of touches across channels, and you want to understand, are they going to convert, right? Or with the explainability, which channels are having the most impact on conversions or buyers. So I always thought like the customer focus, like sort of on life cycle decisions and predictions, was really powerful. And I just think that's really still an untapped opportunity in the market. Related to that, things like when you go, you guys know, like you get into sort of the top, like the sort of higher order, awareness and favorability and consideration. I mean, I think there's some use cases there, but where I think for marketers, like at least the stuff we do, really comes to life is like when you have somebody considering you, and they're now like you're campaigning to them, and you want to acquire them, and they're going to behave in a certain way, and you want to convert them, and then you want to retain them, and you want to create them a loyal, high value customer. Each of those steps in that customer journey is infinitely modelable, whether it's CRM data or other third-party data. But I think there's a huge opportunity there, and I always love to concentrate on that stuff, and I'm trying to emphasize that here. And then related to that, media mix optimization. So with some maybe companies you all work for, agencies in this area, in the what I call them, and all those great agencies, doing like media mix modeling. Like we've literally taken the columns are like out of home advertising, display, TV, radio, and like either indices on reach or frequency or response or even spends. And the dependent variable is like how much you made with this media plan.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn from that. And then now you have these new media plans that maybe you don't want to activate, but you want to predict, if I activate these media plans, like these scenarios, these what ifs, what would my sales be? And like machine learning is really amenable to that. We've done some pretty cool work around what you would effectively call like media mix modeling, but algorithmically, a little different than the approaches I've seen, and similar at agencies. And then another area is attribution. So, you hear a lot these days about ethical and responsible AI. And I love that stuff, but some of it gets a little light. Maybe not light, but just kind of theoretical. It's important. But what's really important is creating like debiasing models, right? Or creating ultimately fair models. And when you create fair models, you're able to assess which data are important to those outcomes. And in Squark, we use something called Shapley, and that's like a type of math. It's coalition game theory, and it tells you which players contribute ultimately to winning a game. The game, let's say it's conversion, and you want to know, and their data is the players. So what data is positively and negatively influencing my conversion? This becomes algorithmic attribution. And I don't think a lot of people think of it that way. Right? And so when I think of what could marketers do with AI, and I'm not talking about summarizing results or, creating emails or campaigns or, generating text. I'm talking about hands-on use cases that help you make decisions that make money and get your bonus.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's in that area, like customer lifecycle prediction, response modeling, of course, attribution and media mix. I think those are super powerful. Like binary, who's going to churn, who's going to be loyal, regression, what's their lifetime value going to be, media multinomial classification, which offers do I make to each individual, the probability of them accepting it, to the time series, understand the impact of my KPIs, and starting to de-risk the situation based on my pacing and performance. So yeah, those are the areas if the company get acquired and, we had decided to go the opposite direction, which was less than hospitable investment capital raise circumstances in the current last few years, taking money that was expensive, I'd be doing more of that. And we're doing more of that at the acquirer. Maybe not getting into attribution and media mix, that explainability to understand what data is influencing to be able to do better targeting. I'll give you an example. If you look at that Forbes article for UPMC, we took Mass, Epic, and Cerner data, so inpatient, outpatient data, joined it with a third-party data source. I can't give away the secret, but it had 1,500 variables about, what everybody does, densities, affinities,
yeah,
graphics. And we turn those digital people that we predicted would respond into physical people through LiveRamp by targeting which factors in the explainability came back. And that's how we got those results. And other use cases not published, I'll give you an example. We found out for University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, people who predict, who do knee replacement surgery tend to be recreational hockey players. So if you know that, where you advertise, hockey rinks, who do you target on social to, get, diagnostics for their knees or knee replacements, hockey players. So these types of realizations were coming out of explainable AI to help create fair models that allowed for better targeting. So I think there's a huge bunch of low-hanging fruit that is possible for all the marketers, but you need like the tools and the staff who can like conceptualize and make it reality. And that's where I saw like a lot of challenges selling, is like people didn't get it, or they weren't trained on it, or they didn't believe in it, or like, you know, of all the things they wanted to do, like maybe we weren't the best at selling it, right? And convincing people to buy it. But there's a lot there. And it's a lot of fun. There's no lack of things to do.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. And this flew by, so I appreciate everyone joining us today. Thank you so much for all the insights, Judah. Welcome back anytime. We do these calls weekly. And next week we'll still keep the call for those who are around, just have more of an open-ended conversation, and happy to hear what anyone else is working on. Just the links to the event calendar and also the member survey that is out right now. Love to get more takes on that. And then, just want to thank everyone. Hope you stay cool if you're in a hot zone right now. And if I miss you next week, have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. And we will we'll talk soon. We've got a question that came in at the buzzer from Noel.
Last minute, I noticed that. That's a great question.
I'm gonna close this, unfortunately, since we are at time and I know folks have to run. But Noel, if you and Judah want to connect separately, all for it. And yeah, I appreciate that. But thanks.
I'd be happy to answer that question offline, or reach out over LinkedIn. And I've got a good response. And so totally understand. Thank you, David.
Awesome.
Keeping us on the time. You got to appreciate that as a moderator. That's
trying.
You're a marketer.
Not easy with this crowd.
David Berkowitz. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. We will we'll talk again soon. Good to see everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. And if it can ever help, please reach out. Thanks, David. It was awesome to be on your show. And thank you for involving me in the community.